They did do some art as well, but that's what makes us unique to human, is this idea of just making art for art's sake, or music and singing and so on. So I just wanted to look at that, because I think that in a world where there are so many divisions and polarizations and so on, it's good to just strip it back to the fact that, 100,000 years ago is when we modern humans became fully formed. By about 90,000 years ago, we had occupied the continent. There were about 1 million people living on the continent then, living in clusters of about 150. And then sometime between 60 to 90,000 years ago, those early pioneers left the continent, first went to Arabia and then Europe and Asia. And one remarkable fact which my late friend Richard Leakey, the Kenyan paleontologist, told me about is that up until between 8 to 12,000 years ago, everybody was dark-skinned, which I think a lot of people find quite remarkable, because that is relatively recent when you think about it. So that's what I delved into in the first chapter, and people may think, but hang on, this isn't about Africa's history, this is, about the origins, but I think it was important to start there.
Reminded of Pankaj Mishra's essay who wrote in 2019 about Brexit, and he titled it "Partition Comes Home to Britain." And he gave the example of how when borders were drawn in India during the independence, a similar callousness by Lord Mountbatten resulted in a landmass of India in between, with Pakistan straddling both sides somehow, and that made sense. Obviously it didn't last. And I feel that there was a similar pattern when it came to drawing borders in Africa.
I mean, you've got Pakistan and Bangladesh out of that.
Yes, but they were East and West Pakistan, and some people thought that was a good idea. Lord Mountbatten thought that was a good idea.
So you say that there was little thought given. Actually, there was no thought given to. So you're talking about the famous 1884 to 85 Berlin Conference, when the European powers all decided to carve up, Africa, the largest share going to the British and the imperial power, and also France. And they just drew, lines with no idea. I mean, so when people talk about African countries, and I'm often asked, which countries do you cover? I'm like, there were no countries that we know of, until the late 19th century, apart from something like Egypt, Abyssinia, now Ethiopia, also had fairly, its borders were fairly drawn up by then, but there weren't really countries as such until they were created at the end of the 19th century. And up until 1870, most of Africa was still in African hands, at least nominally. Obviously, the Portuguese and the British were encroaching on sovereignty, but it still was nominally in African hands. So I think that has left a lot of African countries to this day struggling to build national cohesion. Having said that, there's nobody really in Africa who says, let's go and redraw the borders. It's like, we are where we are, with a few exceptions, like Eritrea was created in 1991 when they fought their war of independence from Ethiopia. In 2011, South Sudan seceded